Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Monday, May the 11th. The Prime Minister will give the speech that will determine his future at 10 a.m. this morning. A Lazarus-style revival or a swan song from a weakened leader? My name is Anne McElvoy at Politico.
And I'm Sam Coates of Sky News. Things really are moving fast. And we'll explain to you on this podcast how some of those who want the PM gone the most now want to delay the contest until the autumn. Find out why in a moment. The speed and direction of how Labour MPs react is actually one of two massive things this week, but the other one isn't on everybody's radar. I want to put it there. That we're waiting to see if the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards opens a full-blown investigation into Nigel Farage, which could escalate the party's troubles over that £5 million gift. They insist it was a gift from Christopher Harburn, and that would escalate that from big to severe. Remember that the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards has the power to suspend MPs and ultimately trigger a recall petition if they find that Nigel Farage should have declared that money. So it's a biggie to watch.
Indeed. But there's no doubting that the main story dominating the news is what Starmer can do today to save his premiership. Now, there's the mixed blessing of low expectations here. The entire PM's future is riding on this speech. I think everyone is expecting it to be underwhelming, given his history of reset speeches. That's what one Labour MP told Playbook today. He will, however, go back to themes that clearly matter a lot to him. Moving closer to Europe is one that will be prominent there, and perhaps even hint that there could be a way to abandoning red lines on the customs union and single market membership in the next Labour manifesto, at least for those who like to read between the lines on what the PM says about Europe. He talks about being at the heart of Europe again. He also says more broadly that incremental change won't cut it for the UK right now.
I just want to pick up, Anne, on that point about Europe before we get any further in, because it's sort of slightly symptomatic of a much wider kind of problem. When in a crisis, Labour defaults to really complex hints and obscure language. And I think we've got about even in these extracts. So on the front page of the Times and other newspapers, it says it interprets the language on Europe as a hint that Keir Starmer will rip up those red lines on the single market, on the customs union. But when I ran that past people in government last night, they said it wasn't a hint about anything. Are we writing the next manifesto? I don't think that's wise. So we've dived into a big speech with a big message, but at the heart of it, the biggest message is confused and have different interpretations emanating from government. And just that kind of starting point isn't helpful.
Yes, I suspect that is laying down markers to say Europe is a code for I'm going to try to assemble this progressive coalition. And that's the way that I see us fighting reform. But in order to do that, well, you have to survive and thrive, don't you? And I think that's why this does mark a pivotal moment in his premiership and a make or break day also for the key figures who've been dissatisfied with this kind of hints and allegations kind of Starmerism in practice. So they have to now decide where they want to figure in this piece of Labour history. And it all comes after Angela Rayner put the PM on notice that he needed to take immediate action, as she put it, to move Labour to the left, and also a backbencher launching a go-it-alone leadership challenge to him, really raising the temperature around this speech. Amid all the hue and cry, Sam, it's always about the numbers, isn't it? And 8 p.m. on Sunday, I think the last time we could check in, the tally was that there were 42 Labour MPs who were happy to back that Katherine West push for the PM to name the date to get out of the way. So a lot of MPs do seem to be waiting till after this appearance to decide which way to jump.
We'll just go through the various elements of the rebellion against the Prime Minister in a moment, but let's just stick with the speech just for now. You say that Angela Rayner's challenge sort of wants to push the Prime Minister to the left from the extracts that we saw overnight, and I'd be interested to hear your view and a bit more of the language that he's used. But there didn't seem to be anything that pushed the government leftwards from what I saw. There is undoubtedly a lot of expectation raising. I actually had somebody from government saying, come on, if you go around saying that this is a make or break speech and this is going to be the speech of Keir Starmer's life, that's never, ever going to be a world that Keir Starmer can satisfy. We know this isn't his happy place. He's never done a particularly barnstorming speech. So if you set that as the test, he's not going to pass it. And look, the bottom line is, he is towards the middle of a parliament where he's got massive fiscal constraints, manifesto constraints. He hasn't consulted his full cabinet on a change of direction of policy. Many of them are in the dark about exactly what he's going to say this morning. So it can never meet the moment of the rhetoric that many are saying.
Fair point. Though I would say by his admittedly modest rhetorical standards, I think he feels, in the amount of time that he's apparently been in the bunker himself, largely writing this speech or pulling it together from strands that have been prepared. So I think in a sense he is setting it up as his make or break moment. And when he says things, or he's going to say things like, to meet the challenges the country faces, incremental change won't cut it, he is responding to a perception that he is admitting, really, that he's seen as too much of a gradualist, too technocratic. He says it is a core Labour argument. He's going to put strength through fairness. Now, personally, I find that a bit adjectival overload. I literally don't know what that means, Sam. I mean, does it mean like if you spend money on security, that will be good for fairness in the sense of what? I mean, quite often you could frame that argument as saying if you spend more on defence and security, you have to take some money out of other things like welfare, and that wouldn't play to the left view of what fairness is. But either way, he thinks that he is saying, which side are you on? You know, that is a message that he wants to come out. And I think he's been prodded to use that kind of rhetoric by people around him, including David Lammy, who said nobody really knows which side you're on. Prime Minister, could you please be clearer about it? Now, does it then really work to clarify what he thinks he needs to change or the direction? And there, I think your question is very apposite. If you're an Angela Rayner or you're the soft left, you're going to listen. What are you going to hear? Are you going to hear, you're going to do something that they want? At the moment, I don't think we have got a clear answer to that, but let's listen in when he gives the speech in real time. Then he talks about the growth message. So if you're a little bit on the right of that argument, or you want more pro-business policies other than tearing up more planning rules, what are you going to get from this? So I don't know in the end whether, having started as a leader who seemed to have havered too much in the murky middle, will we know which way he is going to jump from this speech or not?
Look, I just have a sense that the speech will never satisfy those who've pretty much made up their mind that they want him to go. And it's an increasing number of MPs. You quoted 40 on that Labour list tally who've said at some point in the last few months he wants to go. The number's far bigger than that. But the thing is, what they want to replace him with varies and differs depending on which bit of the Labour Party you're in, which faction you're in. And so that's why there's a sort of cacophony of noise. Let's just spend a few minutes just trying to unpick where the different camps are, what's really going on in the different bits of the revolt against Keir Starmer. And let's start with Wes Streeting. From all the soundings that I took last night, in the first instance, a lot of people are waiting for Wes Streeting. He's probably the closest of anyone to being ready to launch an immediate leadership challenge. Many think that right now is the best time for him to do it because his biggest rival, Andy Burnham, isn't even on the pitch. He's weeks away from being an MP if he moved as fast as it's possible to go. This morning, in the last 20 minutes before this recording, his team were absolutely blunt with me. Wes is out on Thursday for NHS stats. There are no plans for him to emerge before that. That's the answer to speculation in the papers this morning that he could launch his leadership campaign as early as this afternoon. But that is not the message that I am being given from his spokespeople. So just that should recalibrate some expectations. But I do think that this could be the best shot for him going for the job. And his allies say they've completely lost faith in the PM. They want him to run. They think he does have links into the left as well as the right. And one said to me, "We gain nothing in keeping Starmer. Another chance for Wes like this won't come again. All the positives for keeping Starmer now have gone." But his circle is split. And, those who think that Labour contests come down to a battle between the left and the right, well, Labour's history shows that the sort of left flank, the soft left flank, often have greater strengths in numbers. So even if he rolls the dice now, there's a chance that he loses. But the soft left are having a tougher time because, as we've reflected in the last few days, the tide has been going out on Angela Rayner, and there isn't an obvious candidate, right? So one eye of those on the soft left saying they are now betting the house on trying to force the Prime Minister to give a timetable for his departure, probably until the autumn. In other words, the soft left, because Andy Burnham isn't around, want to delay a contest from this week, which is quite something. And they say if they have to have a contest, it could be Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner. But they would much rather prefer the PLP to force the PM to give a timetable for his departure and not do an emergency leadership contest this week. Ed Miliband, Dan, he's being reached for even before we get someone on the soft left get to Angela Rayner. That is quite remarkable, and a quite remarkable shift in her fortunes. Even Angela Rayner seemed to be calling for Andy Burnham to come back and a bit more time for a contest in her 5 p.m. ultimatum statement last night. What do you make of where that side of the party is right now?
Hasn't Ed Miliband always been the quiet candidate in plain sight? I think if you saw this as
he's denied it.
Of course, I would be very surprised if everyone didn't. Are you denying that you are Sam Coates this morning? I'm unsure. I'm setting a timetable to be Anne McElvoy for the autumn. Of course, he denies it, and he does consistently deny it. But Ed Miliband, just a brief moment on him, does have a high degree of credibility with the soft left of the party, and he can deny it until it becomes an emergency, and then say, well, if my party calls me. That is the thing here. Everybody who's denying it, and including the Wesleyans, the great Wesleyan tendency, which seems to be rather too many people all saying what they think West Streeting means. I do actually think this is something that can attend. Streeting is clearly very focused, in many ways, a gifted politician, but there's often a little bit of uncertainty about what West Streeting really wants, and I think that will coalesce after the speech this week. He may decide, and I think also tactically it's better to do his NHS speech first. I mean, that does make sense, the way you were being briefed by someone senior or person senior on the team, because one thing you're saying is Wes Streeting, as well as his rhetorical gifts, is I am a responsible person who has massaged down, sort of, one way or the other, NHS waiting lists. I have got a day job and I have something to show. And I think if he moved ahead of them, you could make the argument that, he was being unserious about his real cabinet job, and the NHS does matter a lot to Labour people. So what about Angela Rayner then? Well, she also did this tendency to send out long messages saying these things that matter to me must change. But fundamentally, I thought that great 5 p.m. missive ended up with my other redhead friend saying, hurry up and wait. I mean, if what you've got to say out of all of this is we need a timetable so I can get my mate Andy Burnham back because I think we'd be the ideal duo, and that was essentially what she was saying, wasn't it? As far as I read it. It's like, do you think what's a bit underpriced here is that the Labour Party is in an electoral crisis? And I think they're beginning to forget this. They're doing exactly what they said they shouldn't do, which is turn inwards, and now say, for months on end, we could have a timetable, a transition. We're beginning to waste a very large chunk, and it'll begin by the autumn to head to best part of half a year, telling the public that they can take their time about any transition that they need to make. That could really actually do them a lot more damage than I think that they're factoring in, Sam, by not moving faster, if indeed they want to get rid of Starmer at all.
There are two massive problems with essentially putting politics as normal on hold. The first is Keir Starmer, if he's in the sort of lame duck scenario, will struggle to get anything complicated through Parliament. And there are all sorts of horrible things from a Labour perspective coming down the track. And I'm thinking of the jury trials legislation. I'm thinking of the send legislation, which we hadn't even seen, with all the difficult send decisions, which weren't in the white paper. And the second thing is that the economic news coming down the track is absolutely brutal. Interest rate rises, the challenge of inflation, which the Treasury is desperately trying to battle, just all of the consequences from the still shut Straits of Hormuz are going to be a very real and present danger. And what we're being set up for with those who want to delay a timetable, delay a contest, is just the spectre of months of navel gazing. Because if we know a contest is coming, but we're not allowed to have it now, it's going to absolutely dominate, because nobody's going to know where the real lodestar of the Labour Party is. And don't assume that a delay to the contest means that Andy Burnham becomes the next Prime Minister. First of all, you've got the very real prospect that he just doesn't win a by-election. I mean, look at all of those results across Manchester. Reform did very well. Nothing is nailed on, however much you are king of the North. And the second thing is, I've stumbled across a really hardcore set of opponents to Andy Burnham. These are people not against changing the Prime Minister ultimately if you need to. They are just people against Andy Burnham because they think he's a gateway to the old Corbynite left, which Starmer did so much to drive out, arguably his biggest success as leader, and that Andy Burnham in the top job would just allow the Corbynite left to seep back into positions of power. And they want to stop that at all costs. So months of navel gazing is potentially bad for the country and doesn't end up where people think it might today.
Fascinating that. And as you say, Andy Burnham in some ways has been the king over the water now for so long. And now when the attention turns to him and what it might actually mean were he to return, I think that's a very smart bookmark that you put down there about would it also remind people of, shall we say, the kind of fungible nature of Andy Burnham's own politics, and what would the right of the Labour Party really make of that if it became a racing certainty that he was trying to get back and get the leadership. Worth pointing out that Katherine West, the Labour backbencher, who's had an unexpectedly critical role in setting up how this week plays out, Sam. Now, she's an Australian-born figure. You can hear that twang when she speaks, that she's certainly perfected the killer art of the political spill from down under, throwing a leadership question up in the air. And her calls for a stalking course candidacy, in effect, has thrown a cat among the pigeons. Also, I think for the Burnham camp, because it has created a mood of urgency, whereas you point out, at least at the moment, he and those who support him think their interests are best served by a kind of timetable approach that they feel that they could benefit from and control. Now, she told Andrew MacDonald at Playbook for today that she intends to watch Starmer this morning and make up her mind about whether she continues and launches a full leadership challenge herself. If it feels flat and it's all the same, she says, I will then write to the PLP at lunchtime with my email looking for support for my bid. Wow, well, this is a long way away from orderly transition, isn't it? But it must be said, it has inconvenienced those who thought that they could control the timetable. And it's also absolutely infuriated the left, who worry it could end up, I think John McDonnell was posting on X last night, the way that he saw it as a stitch up, which I think is just code for, if this were to unravel quickly, it's code for someone like West Streeting getting the top job without the left having the chance to get their player onto the pitch, or maybe even have Andy Burnham as someone who is more palatable to them, which would fit with your point earlier about the kind of soft Corbynism return.
On one level, congratulations to Katherine West. She's said stuff that nobody else is saying in public, but everyone's chatting about in private. You know, you don't win an argument by not making it in public, is my view of politics. So, you know, she's been brave. She's under a lot of pressure. And by setting, to your colleague Andrew MacDonald, a sort of hard timetable, she will focus mind. She's changed this debate already. She's left a mark. So I think there is always some spoils for the brave. Let's see where all of that goes. I do wonder, Anne, whether or not there isn't a bit of ruining the recent past. The only reason we're hearing about the Katherine West challenge is because she can, under the Labour Party rules, mount a challenge with the support of 81 MPs, whether she gets there or not, to force a leadership contest. That wasn't possible 2 years ago. because Morgan McSweeney, in the hubris period immediately after the election, allowed a change to the rules. Just 2 years ago, you could only have this kind of challenge to the PM at conference time, at autumn annual conference. And in a deal with the unions, we actually revealed this last September for the first time, but in a deal with the unions, he got rid of that bar and allowed such a challenge at any point in the 12 months of the political cycle. And so low, you can have a challenge to the Prime Minister, a bit like the Tories at any point of the year. I bet they regret that now. So it's a bit their own fault. I'm not saying it's changed the fact that Keir Starmer's not doing well, but it has created a mechanism to cause a lot of trouble, and MPs, unsurprisingly, have taken that up. Right, we've hit our 20-minute limit. On Sunday, I'm doing something quite unusual. I'm at the least fit I've ever been, and most unhealthy, and I've done no training, but I'm running the Hackney Half Marathon. So I am just going to say to all of those who listen to this podcast, there is a tithe. Do you hop on to my X feed, social media feed, Google Sam Coates Hackney Half, and give a little donation to a brilliant charity called Literacy Pirates to speed me along my way from very slow to quite slow. So an appeal there for anybody who benefits from this podcast, just give something back to a very worthy cause. But we will see each other tomorrow when maybe I'll have done a little bit of training.
I'm going to definitely do that. I like the idea of giving back, particularly to that charity. I just also like the idea of getting a picture of Sam Coates when he's about 12 miles in, which we will post on our socials, and you can have a look and watch Sam Coates suffer.